Hello friends and welcome back for another episode of Indie Impressions. My name is Nick and today we're going to have the pleasure of looking at something called Nidhogg by developer Messhoff. This is a game that has been a long time in the making. It's a game you've probably seen quite a bit about if you've been following the indie scene. There's been screenshots of, actually particularly the shot that's up on screen right now, two people sword fighting in a sort of a castle environment, and there's a chandelier, and beyond that it was all sort of an enigma, but those days are finally over. I mean, honestly, I know what the game is about now. It's surprisingly simple, yet also surprisingly complex, both at the same time. It's an action game, sort of in the vein of something like Dive Kick, in that it's very easy to get into, very accessible, but also very addictive, and there's actually a surprisingly huge amount of strategy to it. Pile on a great aesthetic and some outstanding music, and this is actually a really, really good pick. The developer you might remember is actually Messhoff, who is responsible for such games as Fly Wrench, and also Cream Wolf, both games that I've done videos of on this channel, and you might remember are both very sort of aesthetically interesting games, and both sort of bizarre in their content, and this one sort of follows along the same kind of off-the-beaten-path ethos that this developer seems to take, and I think we should probably just get into the game so I can explain what exactly is going to happen with a little bit more granularity when I'm actually in control here. So I am using a 360 controller, in case you're wondering. The game has a suite of different options, both single-player and online components, as well as a local tournament that you can get some friends together and all have some competition that way. The options are actually pretty basic. Right now, really just music, sound effects, and controls. Controls are also quite basic. Really, it's just two buttons and move around left, right, up, down stuff. So we're going to leave that all just the way it is and go back to the main menu. Alright, so we're going to start up a new game, single player for now. I did try the multiplayer, it works pretty well, which is awesome because it seems to be a common sticking point with indie games, but we're going to start from the beginning on the campaign mode. Kicks us basically right into things. There is sort of a how to play mode. I don't know what was going on with it when I did it, but it seemed like it was just booting me out to the main menu quite often. So I am the yellow fencer. My opponent is the orange fencer, and essentially we're engaged in a very bloody, brutal tug of war. So one player can reach the end of the, I think it's like 3 or 4 different screens. And when you get to the end, you get quickly congratulated and then eaten by what I could only imagine is the creature known as the Nidhogg. So basically what I want to do here is I want to try and disarm my opponent. And now he's not defenseless, he can still punch me quite a bit. But then once I get past him, I can just run. And I want to make it as far as I can without being defeated. So enemies are going to keep spawning in. Uh-oh, that was a little bit risky. But you'll see that it says up in the top right corner, go is in yellow, and that actually means I have the initiative. If it said go facing left with orange, then the opponent would have the initiative. And whoever is the one that last killed the enemy is the one that gets to proceed forward, and basically the opponent is going to keep spawning in the way of the opponent to try and keep them from getting forward. This level that we've started on is actually one of the more difficult ones from my experience, in that there's actually conveyor belts and these tight mine shafts, which actually make it quite difficult to navigate. But it also sort of teaches you in a way to do this disarm move, which is essentially me just rocking up and down on my analog stick and trying to run into my opponent's sword, so maybe I could knock his sword away from him. It doesn't seem to always work. Oh, that was a brutal death. But once we're out of those little caves, essentially, I can do some other moves, like a dive kick onto his head, which if I'm lucky, I can land one and maybe knock his sword away from him in that way. Or I could even throw my sword at him, which is a really bad idea in close quarters, and I probably shouldn't have done that. So now that I'm disarmed, I don't know what I'm actually supposed to do here, other than maybe see if I can get him to raise his sword, and maybe do a little bit of a roll under it. That doesn't always seem to work, though. But it's really interesting, the granularity of how you can approach each combat scenario. I mean, you can hold your sword up, you can hold it down, you can go in for a dive, you can try and throw your sword at him. I mean, depending on your playstyle, and he still has the initiative, which means that I actually just made a kind of a huge tactical error there. I want to try and get in front of him however I can to make sure he's going to keep staying where he is. But I sort of did not accomplish that. Now, it's also worth noting there's some really cool details to this, and each one of the levels has a bit of a different theme to it. I mean, there's a castle one, there's a forest one, there's a cloud one, and then there's this mines one. Each one has its own sort of quirks, like, sort of, if you can imagine maybe if you were playing Bomberman or something from back in the day, how there were all those different types of blocks that would be in certain levels and not in other ones. So now I have the initiative. I want to just try and break away from this guy as quickly as I can. He's going to try and punch me, but he doesn't have a lot of options. So let's keep heading to the right. I can't actually make it up to this top area. Otherwise, I think that would probably be the preferable way. Oh, maybe I can actually get up there. I actually just knocked him down and broke his neck, which is a valid way to get ahead as well. And in this particular case, if we find ourselves in an impasse for too long, there really isn't a punishment. We'll just continue this bloody tug-of-war forever, essentially, until one player comes out the victor, or, you know, somebody gets bored and quits, I suppose. And essentially, the online works just the same way as the single player, and it's really quite exciting as well, and you can easily get quite a bit of hype going on when there's perhaps people watching, I imagine, which sort of makes this, I don't know if I'd go so far as to say an esport, but I imagine it could definitely have that potential if people wanted to give it the legs for that. So I'm on the final screen. I just need to make it one more screen past him, and I have. So now I'm in the final area, get my congratulations. I'm going to gloat a little bit, hold my sword up. Maybe I'll throw my sword, and then I can punch the air like I'm Rocky or something. Yeah, it's my little end zone dance. And then we make our way to the end here, and we're eaten, which means we win. So in the single player, that would bring us to the next level. And there's a whole chain of command that we have to fight through. I think it just gets harder as we go. But you actually have to beat this all in one go, which is a little surprising to me. It seems like that would take quite a while, especially if you get stuck towards the end. But I don't actually know what the punishment is, or the reward is, rather, if you finish the single player. So that is sort of a mysterious thing that I'm curious about figuring out. I also want to mention, aside from just the outstanding music and the fact that this game has a really good sense of ambience, I really do enjoy the aesthetic visually that's going on here. And I would almost liken it to something like a really smooth, sort of modernized Atari 2600 game crossed with Proteus, which for me feels like very high praise. I really enjoy both of those aesthetics, and I think they go kind of well together. And then when you add the music on top of it, you have this very, like, this kind of a chill, transformative experience that I haven't really seen attempted in any other way. So I know this game has been in development for a long time, and it shows. I mean, between the smoothness of the animations, the fact that the game just is really easy to pick up and play and reasonably easy to understand, and the fact that it's got so much depth to it and different ways to approach combat, I feel like it's going to be around for a long time if people really pick it up and embrace it the way that I'd hope they would. And the quirk for the cloud level, if I didn't make this perfectly clear yet, is that when you're standing on certain surfaces, these blocks are actually going to break away and eventually fade. There we go, so now I have initiative. Oh, he freaking spawned right in front of me and took me out immediately. The other thing is also these clouds, some of them will actually just get in your way, so you can't really see what's in front of you, which makes it a little bit difficult sometimes to do some fencing. And he's already beaten me, so that did not take very long. I don't know if he knows how to win like a champ. Maybe he does, actually. He's just going to run to the end there, and bam. We were already wondering, because I actually played a little bit of this on the NLSS today on stream, and we were wondering if there was like a way to get past the worm at the end, and maybe there's like a trick to that or something. Seemed like a good potential spot to put a secret if I was going to put something in somewhere. But yeah, anyway, I'm also really enjoying the fact that, like, as you fight on longer and longer in some of the levels, the blood starts to coat all the floors, so you sort of get to see that it gets a bit worn in, that you've been around for a while. And I also like that the colors of the characters change a little bit depending on the visuals of each level. You know, in the last level we were orange and yellow. In this case we're yellow and green, which I think fits a lot better. With this beautiful sort of lunarscape going on in the background and these twisting clouds, which almost look a little bit like broken textures at times, but it really works. We're keeping to sort of like, I think it would be like a lo-fi, maybe 4-bit, 8-bit at the most aesthetic. And then the background, of course, has a bit of texture going on, and it definitely a bit flickery. I don't know, it just really works nicely together, I'd say. And it's definitely a game that I would love to listen to the soundtrack more of, and I think totally the soundtrack stands on its own as being very strong as well. So I'd love to see if I can make it through another round of this, and if I can make it to the goal, perhaps I can just break away here, and we could maybe even do a multiplayer match if I'm able to match up with someone. There hasn't been a ton of people adopting the game. It's one of the first days that it's been out, so I'm not sure how easy it's going to be to make a match happen. But if I do end up having that happen, that would be pretty cool. Oh, what is he doing? He's duck jumping at me. And also, it should be mentioned, too, some of the other quirks, and we did make it through this level. Oh, yeah, there we go. Like, the castle level has some doors in the way and some occasional pits, and then the outside wilderness level has, like, tall grass which can get in the way. And I think we're going to see that one right now, actually. And this is, I think, the prettiest level, although the last one was quite stunning as well. I really like the color palette here. And also the fact that you can take an upper or a lower path. And when I was mentioning Proteus, I definitely was thinking of this particular level. because it's got such vibrant sort of neon colors going on all at the same time. Not that the last level didn't, but I think the palette really kind of contrasts even better here. And I think the AI has just kind of given up on this level. I'm just going to knock him down and run to victory potentially here. Yeah. Alright, AI does not really want to fight. Totally fine with me. Maybe I can even show you the next level. One more? Can we do one more? Oh, perfect stride. I got an achievement on that one. There we go. So there's the castle. I guess one of us has to get initiative here before we can go off the main opening screen. Otherwise, I guess it would be kind of easy to just break away. Ooh. Alright, that did not work out well for me. Now, it's interesting. I've seen the characters be different colors on this level, so I'm wondering if that's just... maybe there's some sort of a randomized element to this. I'm pretty sure I've seen the characters be orange and yellow here, but, you know, I like the blue and yellow as well. Alright, let's snap his neck and move on with things. Look at all the colorful blood all over the ground. It's so wild. And those little details, like the torch is moving, and of course the chandelier. And I wonder if you can actually go and fight up on the chandelier, because I thought I'd seen screenshots of things like that going on in the past. Oh, that was not a skillful way to do that. The counter for when you're dive kicking, by the way, is just to stand with your sword up. It seems like you just intercept your opponent, and they'll essentially just run into your sword and spear themselves, which... not good for them, pretty good for you, though, if you can work that out. It seems like every move seems to have, like, an opposite reaction to counter it, which is excellent for the swordplay element. And I think in a way or two, you could actually get pretty involved if you wanted to just, like, agree to do some swordplay between each other. But a lot of the times, as far as I can tell in, like, the early level play that I'm at, people just tend to do a lot of one-shot kills without a lot of back and forth. So I think once people really learn the ins and outs of the games, this is going to really evolve into a much, much more detailed experience. There we go. And you could even try, if you wanted to just not even use a sword, just see if you could maybe punch through this guy's defenses sometimes. That was not a good way to manipulate the environment. I basically just dove to my death. And since that was a draw, we actually ended up in a position where neither of us had initiative, and we both had to essentially fight out one more screen's worth before we were allowed to move on. And that did not work how I was expecting it to. Alright, I was able to kick him right in the right spot there. And let's throw the sword, and... oh, he actually ran right into it, so that's another victory for me. Maybe gloat for a second here, and let's be off then. So far I really have very few, if any, really big criticisms to make of the game. I really enjoy the direction that it's taken. And I'm just going to go back to the title screen and see if we can get a multiplayer match real quick, just so we can show that off. Can do offline versus as well in case you wanted to do some local competition. There's also variants, I believe. I haven't tried those out, but I think they have some other little tweaks that you can do to the methods of how the game works fundamentally, which sort of opens the door up for possible expansion later on. So I'm just going to hit matchmaking, just see if we can find someone to play against here and let things happen naturally. But just in general, I've just really enjoyed the game. There haven't been many things that I really would want to change. If I was to make any criticisms, I'd say that it would be kind of neat to perhaps see more arenas in the future. I'm going to pick the Wilds for this match and hit ready again. And we'll have our opponent ready up as well, hopefully. Nope, okay, the opponent left. But that's kind of the nature of playing games online. You can't really predict what's going to happen. But yeah, some more options as far as, you know, levels would be fine. Probably more variations to do with the single-player campaign would also be kind of cool. I mean, it's one thing to just run through one level after another, sort of like a combat ladder, sort of a la something to do with Mortal Kombat. Sort of feels like you're rising up in the ranks with one of those types of deals, and that's fine, and nothing really wrong with that. But I could kind of see there being sort of a rudimentary, very minimalistic story being told here as well, if it was necessary. Because there's so much mystery to, like, why is there a giant worm trying to eat us, and why are we sword fighting to death, and why do we respawn? But maybe I shouldn't ask so many questions, who knows. So I'm going to put a little break here, and we're going to come back as soon as we find a match, and we'll try that out. Alright, it looks like we are in a match now. I'm going to try switching over to the Wilds again and see if they'll agree. Alright, we actually are good to go. Let us begin. So, I've already knocked away his sword. He's trying to scurry away. Not going to work out for him very well. So the tall grass here is the big impediment, because I can't see where my sword just went. But since I still have initiative, oh, I should have just ran. I did not work that one out properly. There's definitely some very exciting give and take in these matches. Oh, I threw my sword, but I didn't realize that that would actually block. And in that case, it would have been smart, or it is often smart, to just run off the opposite direction and hope that that actually puts you ahead of the opponent, which it usually does, actually. Oh, he's going to take the top route. throw the sword, and it hits the edge again. I think we're going to see a spectacular failure on my behalf here, and someone who knows the ins and outs of this game probably already much better than I did. Yeah, there we go. And he runs right to victory. Let's see if we can maybe get another match right after this and just keep it going. We'll try the mines and see how he deals with that, since we don't have a lot of room. Nope, he's just going to back out of the match. Alright, so I guess then that'll be it. Sort of an anticlimactic way to go out, I certainly grant that. But that was Nidhogg. Very, very good game. Highly recommended. If you watch this video and immediately want to go check it out, it's going to be on Steam. It is going to be at a discount for a little while when it first came out. Definitely recommend grabbing it at the lower price if you can. But still, provided this does get support post-release, I think that the total price of it, which I believe should be $15, it's not a ton to ask, given that this has a ton of potential for many, many hours of entertainment. So I guess everybody will find different levels of, value proposition for this one. And in terms of overall content, I guess there's not a ton here if you're going to be playing this by yourself. But if you have a friend to play with or a group of friends to play with that are all interested in this one, I think that you could have quite a good time. And I think it's probably a reasonable price for what you will get out of it. But that's just my 2 cents anyway. So I hope you enjoyed the episode, and I hope you'll check out the links in the description for the game itself, and of course all my social media links like my Twitter, my Facebook, my website, and of course my Twitch channel where I stream indie games and other crazy stuff. Feel free to go check through the website though, indie-impressions.com, if you want to go find more in the series. Over 600 other episodes where I have basically broken down an indie game like this to go over the pros and cons and made some little minor criticisms and such. But if you're new to the series, welcome, and hopefully you'll stick around for plenty more. We've got a new episode coming up every single day, and have done so for the last 600 plus days. So I hope to see you back again tomorrow for another one, and I hope you'll continue leaving your support and hanging out with me in the future. So thank you again for watching, and I will see you tomorrow. Take care.